Today I'll give lecture on absurd theatre. The title of my lecture is An Experience in Emptiness. Samuel Beckett's Waiting for Godot introduced to the English stage the kind of theatre that Martin Esslin has called theatre of the absurd. Absurd theatre movement diagnoses humanity's plight as purposeless in an existence out of harmony with its surroundings. This movement produces a state of metaphysical anguish, which is the central theme of the writers in the theatre of the absurd, most notably Samuel Beckett, Eugene Ionesco, and Jean Genet. Purposelessness, anxiety, and basically this kind of theatre seeks to express the feeling that the world cannot be explained or reduced to a system of values. In the plays of absurd theatre movement, the feelings of purposelessness, anxiety, and abandonment by God engendered by thinking of man were partly a product of the Holocaust of the Second World War. The important revival and the experiments can be summed up under three headings of poetic, angry, and absurd, and all three have been concerned with the physical aspect of the theatre. The first major revolt was verse drama. The writers of verse drama, mostly poets, wanted to widen the audience for their work by moving into the theatre. T.S. Eliot's attempt were more successful, dating his first drama, Murder in the Cathedral. Serious verse drama was gone as a vital force before the two major trends that were to replace it with growing awareness and influence of Brecht. With the publication of John Osborne's Look Back in Anger, the angry movement took its shape. The group of writers of this genre were committed lot and carved for social change. In the modern period, a revolutionary change took place with the emergence of thinkers like Galileo, Bacon, and Descartes. These thinkers were influenced by the scientific discoveries in the realm of physics. Galileo and Descartes shattered the Greek and medieval point of view. Alfred North Whitehead believed that under the influence of modern science, we have entered into an age of disbelief in the spiritual nature of the universe. The activities of the universe has no logic and there is no one behind the curtain. The universe is purposeless, meaningless, and valueless. Man is a total stranger in the cosmic environment. Nietzsche declared the death of God. Existentialists believing in godless universe propounded the theory of importance of human individual's freedom. Sartre and Camus, two great existential philosophers, exerted a great influence on the absurdists. Camus' The Myth of Sisyphus became the poetics of the absurd. The movement is a reaction to realism. The word absurd in the context of post-war theatre does not mean precisely the same as it does in ordinary uses, but refers to a concept. The movement of absurd theatre is an extreme reaction to realism, and historically has its roots in the work of Alfred Jarry. Strindberg's expressionist drama plays The Ghost Sonata and Pirandello's Six Characters in Search of an Author, and the work of number of French existentialist philosophers who flourished during the immediate Second World War. It is not man who is absurd and not the universe which is absurd, but man's relationship to the universe. John Russell Taylor is of the opinion that the absurd involves humanity's plight as purposelessness in an extends into the harmony with its surroundings. Esslin has suggested that in the play, man is stripped of the accidental circumstances of social position or historical context, confronted with the basic choices, the basic situation of his existence. It is a play which regards the 20th century man as having lost his bearing spiritually, as living in doubts and uncertainties. The absurd dramatist is therefore uncommitted politically because he is engaged in a more subjective occupation. In the words of Smith, without the support of groups or labels or slogans, or semblance of logical construction of the rational linking with idea in intellectually viable argument is abandoned, and instead the irrationality of experience is transferred to the stage. A number of French existentialist philosophers flourished during and immediately after the Second World War. Jean-Paul Sartre, Being and Nothingness, 1942, and Albert Camus. The Myth of Sisyphus, 1942, dominated the new literary cult. Martin Esslin relates absurd theatre to a trend in philosophy. Martin Esslin admits that this concept has been abused, but he insists that concepts of this kind are useful when new conventions arise. He further says, man finds himself freed with a frightening and illogical universe in which the means of communication, language, is also suspect. Philosophers and dramatists are responding to the same cultural and spiritual situation, although not with tears of despair, but with the laughter of acceptance. Esslin is of the opinion that the metaphysical horror that surrounds human existence, there may be a vast cosmic nothingness with apparently no purpose. For Heidegger, our being is a being thrown into an historical situation which we cannot escape. Hegel tells being is a dialectical necessity of opposing nothing to being. Sartre perhaps says nothing much more firmly than either of the Germans. Nothing for him is human consciousness. Sartre offers a short conclusion to being and nothingness in which he considers the metaphysical and ethical implication of his philosophy. Sartre, Camus and Malraux were the chief spokesmen in France. Sartre's aesthetic existentialism, Marlene Ponte's studies on phenomenology, and Camus' motion of absurdity and its counter, the sense of revolt or rebellion, were very much instrumental in determining the Gestalt. This had its effect on every sphere of life, social, cultural and artistic. The playwrights of the absurd theatre refused to have any faith either in religion or in God. They had no hope in any destiny of man, but had immense courage to confront existence in all its dimensions. These thoughts were metaphysical. For them, literature was just a means to an end, the expressions of their philosophical concepts, existential concepts like existence, choice, time, space, God, identity of self, meaning and purpose of life, and so on. Banker says these playwrights do not propound any school of philosophy. Neither Beckett nor his characters philosophize on the concept of time. They have been completely soaked in the intellectual climate of the age which produced Heidegger, Sartre, Camus and Wittgenstein. No wonder then they are very pessimistic in their works, which show a pessimistic view of existence born in an absurd cosmos where God's death was announced by Nietzsche. The mortuary rites of God's death were performed by subsequent thinkers from Heidegger to Sartre and Camus. Sharing the metaphysical anguish of Sartre and Camus, the absurdists do not use rational device to portray the basic condition of human existence. The absurdists knew that the loss of meaning in human life or rational motivation can best be expressed in their search for a valid and authentic image of modern man. Such a theatre then presents anxiety and despair, a sense of loss at the disappearance of solutions, illusions, and purposelessness. Such a theatre then presents anxiety and despair, a sense of loss at the disappearance of solution, illusion, and purposefulness. The concept of absurdity, a mystical experience of nothingness, is closer to the Buddhist and Zen philosophy. Absurd theatre speaks a new language, a new concept. Theatre of the absurd has produced some of the finest dramatic achievements of our time. In an essay on Kafka, Ionesco says, absurd is that which is devoid of purpose, cut off from the religious, metaphysical, and transcendental roots. Man is lost. All his actions become senseless, absurd, useless. Adamo gives an interesting account of the genesis in his play Les Ping Pong. Two old men are shown playing ping pong without a definite meaning. The playwright wants to say that all human endeavor comes down to same futility, senile whiling away of the remaining time before death. Echoing the philosophy of Tao and Buddhism, Arthur Adamo believed in the personal aspects of the absolute. About the predicament of the modern man, Adamo says, from whatever point he starts, whatever path he follows, modern man comes to the same conclusion behind its visible appearance, like life hides a meaning that is eternally inaccessible to penetration by the spirit that seeks for its discovery, caught in the dilemma of being aware that it is impossible to find it. and yet also impossible to renounce the hopeless guest. The hero of Nausea shows that language and the world are hopelessly divorced from one another. Sartre forwards an argument that to know the other is difficult because knowledge requires an object and the other is always subject. He says, "When I die, I shall no longer have the possibility of revealing myself as subject." The body to Sartre is contingency and nausea. He feels that there is nothing behind the body, but the body is wholly psyche. The body is lived and not known. Beautiful lines indeed, where he says that body is simply lived and not known. The absurd for Camus is an absence of correspondence between the mind's needs for unity and the chaos of the world. Though Brecht belonged to the committed theatre, yet he was one of the first masters of the absurd theatre. His play, Caucasian Chalk Circle, presents unusual incidents. Brechtian technique of song and dance bring its socially committed plays an atmosphere of absurdity. Ionesco has no message to deliver. He himself says, "I am a writer, I am not a postman." Ionesco is not committed to artistic definitions, not to political or religious codes. This can be illustrated by the chairs. An old man and woman have lived a mediocre life on an island. The old man is convinced that he has something important to say before he dies, and encouraged by his wife, he invites all remaining human beings to come and hear the message. A chair is brought for each guest who is invisible, and when they are all assembled, the old couple leap to their deaths in the sea, leaving the orator, the only other visible character, to deliver the message. But he is a mute and can only grunt. For what important message can be communicated, and he could sum up life in a sentence. The orator leaves, and for a long time we watch the stage full of chairs, listening to the waves washing on the walls of the house. Ionesco is of the opinion that no society has been able to abolish human sadness. No political system can deliver us from the pain of living, from our fear of death, or thirst for the absolute. Attacking the concept of storytelling in a play, he states, "I do not write plays to tell a story. The theatre cannot be epic because it is dramatic. For me, a play does not consist in the description of the development of such a story, but that would be writing a novel or a film. A play is a structure that consists of a series of states of consciousness. His verbal rhythms are subtle, creating their own kind of hypnotic tension." Martin Esslin says, "Waiting for Godot does not tell a story. It explores a static situation. Nothing happens, nobody comes, nobody goes. It's awful." The action of waiting is reflected in the dialogue, which can be recognized as the absurd effort of Sisyphus, who remains a prisoner of endless fiction he produces. Godot symbolizes supernatural power, whose arrival is supposed to change the sordid situation. The play Waiting for Godot stands for salvation. The hope of salvation may be evasion of the suffering and anguish from the dark realities. Beckett's television play A. Joe introduces us to a lonely elderly person who never speaks but listens with terror mounting to a woman's voice. As the voice drones on, the camera catches Joe in close-up. Then there is darkness. The voice of woman which Joe hears is being inside his head. It is his consciousness. The impossibility of ever attaining certainty or meaning is one of the main themes of Beckett's plays. Beckett is of the opinion that our minds are as a series of performances which we watch. The ideas are illusions. Philosophy of the academy is not a philosophy of reality. Culture is not reality. Logic is not reality. It is a function of structuralism, a product and not a phenomena. Writing a Jean Genet, Arnold Hinchcliffe says, his plays are based on fantasy and dreams and discuss the importance of individuals trapped in society trying to find a meaning through the methods of myth but doomed to failure. Genet's theatre is theatre of social protest. The balcony is a fine example of his violent rage of prevalent social norms. Genet's work has affinities with the theories of Antonin Artaud and with the theatre of the absurd, with the existentialism of the French philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre, adopting the elements of absurd and existentialism in his own unique style. Beckett says the creation of the world did not take place once and for all time, but takes every day. So the world of sense and perception has indeed been transcended. What is left? Nothing but me, of which I know nothing. Zen has no idea of God, no father in the sky. It leaves you totally alone. Hence Zen is not interested in answers or in questions. Osho says mind is multi-psychic and all the fragments are falling apart in different directions. Mind only thinks and never lives. Diverse figures such as Kierkegaard, Dostoevsky, Nietzsche, Sartre and Kafka seem united in the perception of the absurdity of the man's condition. Ionesco is of the opinion that absurd is that which is devoid of purpose, cut off from his religious, metaphysical and transcendental roots. Man is lost. All his action becomes senseless, absurd and useless. Theatre of the absurd will remain as a powerful movement because of its fundamental probing. Such a theatre presents anxiety and despair, a sense of loss at the disappearance of solutions, illusions and purposefulness. Facing up to the loss means that we face up to reality itself. Thus, absurd drama becomes a kind of modern mystical experience. Martin Esslin further says, theatre of the absurd is concerned in a psychological reality expressed in images that are the outward projection of status of mind, fear, dreams, nightmares and conflicts within the personality of the author. The dramatic tension produced by this kind of play differs fundamentally from the suspense created in a theatre concerned mainly with the revolution of the objective characters through the unfolding of a narrative plot. Absurd theatre is very near to the sensibilities of Zen Buddhists and Tao masters. Martin Esslin says, devaluation of language, the theatre of the absurd, is in tune with the trend of our time. Large areas of meaningful experience now belong to a non-verbal language such as mathematics, formulas, and logical symbolism. Thank you.